Good morning. I'm Jonathan Grantham. I'm the Deputy Superintendent for Curriculum Instruction here in Marion County. Welcome to our first segment called Grantham Greats. Grantham Greats is an opportunity for us to honor the great things happening here in Marion County. Today we're at Harborview Elementary. Harborview Elementary has roughly 110 faculty members and almost 875 students. Today we're going to talk about the observation cycle. The observation cycle for a teacher consists of the pre-observation, the observation, and the post-observation. So let me introduce you to the two superstars here in this building. We have a super principal, Ms. Heather Guest, and we have a third grade teacher that you're going to meet in just a few minutes named Mrs. Mills. So come with me, let's meet the rock stars of this place and follow the observation cycle. Good morning.
Good morning, Dr. Grantham. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. I'm so excited you're here today. I'm really excited to show you the great things my teachers are doing in their classrooms and, more importantly, the observation cycle.
Let's go check it out.
I saw that you put your pre-observation on the portal, and so I wanted to talk through that before I came in to see the lesson. And so I wanted to know why you chose that lesson, because I noticed it wasn't part of the curriculum maps.
Yeah, I chose this lesson because when we did our benchmark testing, I noticed that all of my students, there was not one cluster of standards that was like, hey, they're good in this one, or really one standard that, hey, all my students are great on.
All right, so what strategies and activities are you going to utilize? I know you said that you got them, you looked at the test design summary, but where did you actually get the activities from? And
yeah,
tell me a little bit about that.
I got the lesson in its entirety on the single sign-on website, which is on our portal, and it's on from DOE, and they give us, just great information on there, and we'll kind of break down the standard, and it's just very standard-based driven.
So when you do this lesson, you said something about having different leveled groups, and so tell me a little bit about that.
Okay, so when I do this lesson, they are going to be paired in groups of 2, okay. And so for my students that struggle, they're going to be paired with somebody a little bit higher than them, not necessarily my highest student, but somebody that I know understands what we're doing. That way they don't feel like they're all alone there.
How will you know that the students get it, I guess? And I know that you said that there's a reading passage involved with that. That was what you said in your pre-conference notes. So what does that look like for your lower students? Are you going to have the other students read to them, or what does that look like?
Actually, I'm not. The reason being is because I have taught already something out of key ideas and details and craft and structure. And so what's great about the single sign-on website is the 2 standards that we've already worked on were the same passage.
Okay.
So they're very familiar with the passage. We've read it as a class. They've read it in groups. And so we're kind of nearing the end of the week, and so they're very familiar with the passage,
okay.
Even my lower students.
So you're really trying to see if they know the skill, not necessarily if they can read the passage.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. Okay. So when you get to that point and you're doing the activity with the students, I know you said something in your notes about sticky notes and leveling the students. So tell me what that looks like and what exactly you're doing with that activity.
Right. So they are going to level themselves first. We break down the standard, and they pick out the no's and the do's. And then they will rate themselves in the back of the room, and they will place their picture on a 1, 2, 3, or 4, depending on how they feel. Once that lesson is over, they'll do it again on how they feel. But then also during the lesson, near the end, they'll have sticky notes, and there'll be questions on the board in different colors, and they will place the red question on the red, and that'll be around the room. That's kind of like my ticket out the door, but also at the very end they'll say, okay, how do I feel about this, and go put their picture, how they feel about where they end up on the lesson afterwards. So we're going to break apart our standard, all right? So we already did this one earlier this week. Now we're going to do this one. It's 3R 3.8. Before we get started, can somebody tell me what kind of reading that we're going to do? What kind of passage are we going to read? Kishlani?
Fiction.
Non-fiction, good job. How do you know that?
Because it has an I close to it with the R.
And what does the I mean?
Informational.
Good job. Okay, so now we're going to break apart the no's and the do's. Okay, who's got a do or no for me? Jordan.
Describe as do.
Describe as a do. Good job. Okay, what else do we got? Yep, Jenna.
A text.
Text, what is that?
A do.
A do. Why did we decide as a class that that was going to be a do? Garrett?
Because you have to read it.
Because you have to read it, so you have to do something, right? What else do we got? Jaden.
Cause and effect.
Cause and effect. Is that a no or a do?
A no.
A no. Good job. We have to know what cause and effect are. Joelle?
Sequence.
Sequence, what is that? A no or a do? A no. Okay. Now, after reading this, are there some words that we don't know?
Yeah.
Garrett, what's a word you don't know? Which word is that one? What's it start with?
See?
Connection?
Yeah.
Okay. Can somebody tell Garrett what connection means? Kishlani? Right, so if you have a Lego, 2 Lego pieces, do you connect them together? Okay, so it's the same thing. We have to make a connection between particular sentences and paragraphs. All right, any other words before we get started? Jordan?
Sequence.
Sequence, okay. Now, this is we have got to know sequence, okay? If we don't understand sequence, we're not going to understand the standard, okay? So that's what we're going to talk about. I'm glad that was the last thing that you said, because we're going to talk about sequence. Does anybody know what a sequence is? Jason?
Like in the order that something happens?
Yes, very good. So we need to figure out, that's why you have some stuff on your desk, that we're going to figure out the particular order that these things go in, what sequence they go in, okay? So we're going to look at, there's a few. We're either going to do comparison, cause and effect, first, second, and third, okay, and how that is with sequence, okay? Because all of that is a certain sequence. So, remember, we already did this on Monday because that's what our standard was on Monday. What happened and why did it happen, right? Good questions to ask yourself, okay? And remember, you were looking for a cause, not a solution. Okay, so based off this standard, you guys are going to come up, I'll call you up in groups, and we're going to quickly, without talking, I want you to move your picture to where you think you are. A 1, a 2, a 3, or a 4, okay? 4 is, I could totally ace this, remember? All right, and 1 is, no idea just yet, but I'm going to get there, and then we kind of get it, getting the hang of it, okay? So, group table 3, come on. Move your picture quickly, so think about where you are. So what we are going to do today is you have the text that we have been reading this whole week, okay, about George Washington, all right? We don't know necessarily the order that it's supposed to go in, and so what we're going to do is we're going to look for words, okay? We're going to look for words that help us to put it in the right order. Briefly looking at this, and because we've already read it, what type of order do you think it is? Do you think it is comparison, cause and effect, or first, second, and third? What do you guys think? Jason? Why do you think it's first, second, and third?
In the story, all the dates, even from the first date, as it went down on the dates, on the years, it got bigger and bigger and bigger.
Awesome. Okay. Thumbs up if you agree with Jason. Jaden, do you agree with Jason? Okay. All right. He is correct. So it is first, second, and third, which is sequence. Okay. Your graphic organizer says sequencing organizer, right? Okay. So the first thing I want you to do is put the title at the very top. Not in a box, because it won't fit in a box, but just at the very top. Okay? All right. Now tell me, What is my title, Jenna?
George Washington.
Okay, George Washington. Okay, so I'm going to take George Washington and I'm going to move him. Now, I want you to take a couple minutes and I want you to read together, okay? So I want it to go back and forth between even and odd.
Grantham was not trying to elect him again, but Washington did. When Washington grew up, he joined the
What I want you to do now is I want you and your shoulder partner to put them in the best order that you think they go in on your graphic organizer. Make sure you're looking for those logical connections, the key words.
And they set it on the fourth paragraph.
Okay, so where's all my sentences? Are these 4 left?
Yeah.
Okay,
Well,
so,
this one ain't left because we know this is the one, the last one. That's why we put it right here.
okay, good job. Okay, so you can have this one here because you know it's last. Okay, so George Washington was the first president of the United States. How do you know that goes first? There are some key words in here that tells me, hey, that is probably the first one,
I wish I could know.
right? If you had to pick one word that tell me, hey, what is this, how do I know this is first? What word would you pick? From here. You don't have to make it up. It's from here. First. It's a good thinking, huh? Do you think it's going to go first? Okay. All right, so let's place them in the correct order. I already walked around and most of you have them in the correct order. Good job. All right. So, what is my first paragraph? Joel. Okay. All right, who's next? Go ahead, Alan.
1889, Washington became the first president of the United States.
So while you guys were reading and you guys picking the correct order, I didn't ask you for your logical connection, okay? That means how did you know that that's what order it went in? What words were your signal words? Okay, I don't want them yet. I don't want them yet. I know. Okay. Is this lesson so far, what we have done so far, does it follow the standard we talked about at the beginning?
Yeah.
Does my standard say anything about a sequence? Yes. Okay. So we already decided that it was first, second, and third, right? Okay, so we're already addressing that part of the standard. Now it also, is there a word on your graphic organizer that also says something that's in the standard? Jason.
Logical connection.
Logical connection, okay? That's on our graphic organizer. We're going to try to find the words that help me make the connection between these paragraphs, okay? So what I want you to do is you and your shoulder partner, for the very first one that you decided was your first paragraph, I'm going to have you use Class Lab. I want you and your shoulder partner together to come up with what word or words. It should not be like a whole sentence. One word or 2 words that helped you decide, hey, this is the first one. If I had to pick a word, what's my word that made the logical connection that it was first? Garrett?
The one that it was first.
First. Good job. Okay. All right. We found the logical connection between all of these paragraphs. Why did we do that, Emma?
Because we looked in the text.
That's how we did it. Why did we do it? Joelle? To learn how to do it, okay. But why did we have to learn how to do it? Kishlani?
So we can learn our standard.
So we can learn our standard, okay? Now, this next part, you are going to do on your own. How can you describe the connection between these sentences is the first question. You do not have to write the questions on the sticky note. Second is, when and why did the colonists become angry with the British? Third is, what do you notice about how events are sequenced in the passage? What is the pattern? And if the dates were removed from the passages, What transition words or phrases could be added to help the reader understand the sequence in which the events took place? When you are finished with the green question, I want you to bring your sticky note up here, put it up here. Okay? When you're done with the yellow, you're going to put your sticky note right here. When you're done with the black one, you're going to put it right here. And when you're done with the red one, you're going to put it right there. Now we're going to see. So we did a whole lesson, broke down the standard, we went over the standard, and that's what we learned today, right? So who wants to move themselves? Okay? Table 1, come move yourself if you want to move. Hey, Jaden, why did you feel like you moved down? Still don't get it? Okay.
Wanted to talk to you about your observation that we did the other day. I think you did a great job, by the way. Your kids were very well behaved, and I really liked the things that you had going on in there. So before I go into what your observation looks like and your different ratings and things, I just wanted to find out what you thought about the lesson, how you think it went.
I thought it went really well. I was actually surprised with how easy it was for them to put them in order. I was actually, like, almost all the groups had them in the correct order from the onset. There was only a couple groups that I went around and noticed there was just a couple out of order. And so I was surprised by that a little bit, which is a good surprise. But I was very proud of my students as a group, for sure.
We'll just go ahead and start with the first domain, and so that looks at your lesson planning and everything. And I know that you've worked really hard with planning with your teammates and things, and you guys have really unwrapped the standards. And so one of the first ratings is you, for the knowledge and content area, was highly effective. And one of the things that I think that you've done a really great job as is you're looking at the standards that the students had not passed on the district benchmark. We started with that, and then you're assigning skills that they need to work on. I know that when you did the unwrapping activity, one of the things that I noticed was that some of your students struggled with that more than others. And so I was wondering if you had ever considered, or if you've ever done, maybe at a different time or whatever, allowing the students to unwrap them on their own or even in partners.
Because I started doing this later in the year, really, getting a hang on the standards and that type of thing, I have totally thought about at the beginning of the year starting a standards notebook, and having them write out the standards, and like almost them keeping a little notebook of them rating themselves, because in language arts you go back and forth, whereas math you continue to move forward. And so because you go back and forth in between these standards and language arts, I was thinking I could start with a notebook, and then every time we get to a standard we've already addressed, go back to it, unwrap it again, and then seeing where they rate themselves, once we readdress the standard.
Another thing that I saw in the back, at the very beginning of your lesson, you referred to the posters, and there were cause and effect and compare and contrast, and you were doing you were reviewing what you had done the previous day and reminding them of that. But I wondered, because those were so far in the back of your room, and I know that this was a different type of day, so do you have anything like that in your notebooks or anything that that the kids who are more visual or maybe needed to underline or see some of those words, do you have anything like that readily available for them? Because I didn't see any use of that, but I didn't know if that would have been another tool that you could have brought in.
Right.
So
I have interactive notebooks in language arts, and what I try to do is do some type of posters where they're drawing them themselves. For that particular, I didn't have the cause and effect or that type of thing, so I didn't refer to it. But looking at that, I could totally have done that and had them have their own cause and effect poster or that type of thing.
One of the things that we did that I really liked, and I missed the end of this, was that you had level 1 through 4 questions, and those were the things that I think you told me that you found on the single sign-on. Is that correct? So, so in there was the level questions, and you had each child on a sticky note write the level 1 through 4 questions or the answer to those. So you had them go around the room and post those up, and that's when I left. So I was wondering how you checked those, because that's the piece that I did not see, how you checked those, and if that you thought was an effective way, or if there was a better way that you think that could have been handled, because I noticed some of the children really struggled with the level 1 questions. Some of them were flying through and were already done with level 4 before a few of yours were still trying to answer the level 1. So
What I've noticed is like, normally you have a group of students who can answer question 3 or 4. And so maybe just starting with question 3 or 4 with those students, and, possibly putting, because I had them colored, I could put them on colored, cardstock paper or, cards or that type of thing, and starting there, and maybe giving some of my lower students just question 1 and 2 instead of all 4, because, it does take them longer. And if they get question 1 and 2 and they get it right, following up with them, can they do level 3 question maybe with me, and working their way through that.
is there anything that you would change or do differently if we came back and did the lesson again? And how are you going to share this with your teammates? Because I know you all collaborate a lot on a regular basis and share what you've done to improve on it.
So I've also been thinking, so there's this page that has observation notes within each lesson, and so you can level the students, but it also has observation notes. Well, I keep track, as I think as teachers we all do this, we keep track of all of our kids. Well, sometimes it just flies super fast, and so I want it instantaneously. So I have iPads in my classroom, and so taking an iPad and being able to, as I'm doing the lesson, all right, hey, this student rated himself lower after the lesson, and just, I know that, so I put it in the notes, but doing it as they're working, as I'm going around asking them, just questions. Okay, hey, this student is here, or this student doesn't get it at all, and just having that in the observation notes instantaneously, and so that way, I don't forget something or that type of thing.
So you're giving formative assessments throughout the lesson. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, for sure. And then just keeping those notes on them, in that it's in real time,
Okay. All right. Well, I think you did a great job, and your kids did a great job too, and I appreciate you letting me come in.
We're back to talk about the observation cycle. Kind of walk us through the pre-observation cycle with your teacher and explain the process of how that begins before instruction starts.
Okay, so Mrs. Mills and I had been working on a pre-observation form together that was a little different than what a normal one would look like, because we had been in a full day of collaboration probably 2 weeks prior.
Okay.
So we had done a lot of unwrapping the standards and things like that. So Mrs. Mills was very excited because it finally clicked with her what the lesson was really supposed to look like. But typically when a teacher comes in and has a pre-observation, they'll show me the lesson that they're doing and have conversation with me. And typically I don't do a lot of tweaking unless it's somebody that I feel like is already struggling. My reading coach had been in there, my PDS had been in there, and she had been working with her on unwrapping the standards with her students. So that's why her lesson.
When you say unwrapping the standards, she's standard-based instruction, so she comes in with the standard.
Yes.
And then walk us from there, and then all the way through that pre-observation process.
Okay, so she takes the standard that she's working on, and so in Mrs. Mills' case, we had done a benchmark, which was not something that the district had mandated this year, but we had done a benchmark, and we used the standards from the benchmark that we knew we were weak in, and we also looked at skills and lessons that we knew from last year's FSA that across the district, across the state, we were low and weak in. And so then we took those lessons and then we broke it apart and looked at also the curriculum maps, because there's a lot of great resources in there as well, and looked at the curriculum maps and aligned it with that. And so what Mrs. Mills wanted to do is revisit a lot of the standards that she knew her children had struggled on. So this time when Mrs. Mills went in to teach this lesson, she had been working with the text for several days. So that was a little bit different also. So the children didn't really have to grapple with the text because they had already seen it.
Right.
So this time they were working in small groups and they were comparing things and looking for words and strategies really to help them kind of understand.
You've identified the standard that we're going to teach too.
Yes.
Now, was there an objective? Did she do it as an objective? Did she have an essential question? How does she frame that for for you in the pre-observation?
So she had she didn't have an essential question necessarily. She had a standard, and then what she did is she asked for the nouns and verbs in the in the question or in the standard for the students, and then she had the students rate themselves on how well they understood it. And because they had done it for several days, some of them said that they really understood how to do it. And then at the end of the lesson, she had the children come back and rate themselves again. Okay. And I found it really interesting, because she's done this with her students many times before. Students really are honest and truthful about it, because one child took his little person, for lack of better words, and moved it down several, and basically said, after I've done this lesson, I really don't understand it now. Okay. So I was glad to see that she had built that rapport with the students, and we talked about that as well. So
during the pre, did she have some other kind of way to plan for assessment other than a self-reflection with the students? Is there some kind of assessment instrument she was using that she identified in the pre-observation?
Well, she had done these lessons before, and then she had them work in small groups, so she had assigned high, medium, and low students to the group, so she had already pre-grouped them within the lesson, and then at the end she had them do a ticket out the door. So that was kind of what it was. So and it was on little post-it notes, and she had level 1 to level 4 questions, and
so
she could have
during her pre-observation, she had planned for differentiating instruction for each child based off needs that she had assessed in previous days.
Right, she had done that, and then once she got into the lesson, she noticed that some of the children were really picking up on it a lot faster than others, so she hadn't planned as much for that, and so that was something we talked about in the post-observation.
So the cognitive process that she used to plan for her lesson, you felt like was overly articulated, that she was prepared, that she had a plan, she kind of could see and foresee where the lesson was going to go in the pre-observation. So you felt good as a principal after the pre-observation. The observation, you have to kind of be very quiet in there, and you have to be an onlooker, and you have to pay attention. But what did you see? What did you notice in the classroom during the actual observation? I
love the conversation that the kids were having. So the kids were talking about it back and forth, and that's always good when you can see the kids explaining to one another. She has several retainees in her classroom, and so watching them kind of get it this year, it was really exciting to me, and see that their confidence had been built up. So this is something that they do all the time in her classroom, so they didn't feel like they couldn't answer, where in the past they might have shut down and things like that. So this was a common thing that they did, and so Mrs. Mills has got really good transitions in place. Good. And the kids know what they're supposed to be doing, and it wasn't out of the ordinary. She wasn't putting on a show for me, and you could tell that because the conversations were really good. Then when they moved to the next activity, that's where I was talking about the different levels, and so what she had done is she had put post-it sticker papers around the board, and so the kids had to answer level 1 through 4 questions. And so what she had all of the students do, and this is where we talked about something we would change for next time, is she had all the kids do level 1 questions first, and all of them didn't need to.
Let's talk now about the post-observation, which is the most important piece of the observation cycle. What kind of questions did you ask? What did you learn about your teacher? What did your teacher learn about herself doing the post-observation?
Mrs. Mills was really excited about what she did as a lesson as a whole group, but immediately she saw the same things that I did. So it was funny because I mentioned some things to her, and she could immediately say, yes, I thought about that already. So one of the things I said is, what would you do differently? And we talked about differentiating within the lesson, which she thought she had planned for, but she could have done that right on the spot. So it could have been more like a formative assessment instead of waiting until later on when the kids had posted the things up. She also could have, utilized a para or something like that. So that was one of the kind of takeaways from that. The students, one thing that we didn't get to see was her students track their data, and so learning checks, informative assessments, anything that they do in math or in reading, she actually has a notebook for them, and they have to track their data. And so that is one thing that has been really successful with her students, because they can tell you exactly where they are on each standard, and so that's one of the tracking tools that she uses. So we talked about that a little bit more. For Mrs. Mills, the big takeaway for her is she's sharing this with her teammates, right. and it's kind of spreading, not because I'm making them spread it, but it's spreading around the school, which is really exciting to me, because they're learning that they don't have to follow I want them to follow a guide. The curriculum map obviously is a guide, but they can utilize some of the great tools and resources that we have out there. So hopefully some of the things that we continue to share, not only at our school but throughout the district, will help with that.
What did you gain from this experience? What did you learn from this as you kind of got to go through the observation cycle with the pre and the observation and the post? What did you learn about?
I know very little about the new standards, and I feel like doing this with my teachers and really having those collaboration days in the past, I haven't really gotten to unwrap and really be as in depth with the standards, and especially because they're so new,
right,
that we did this year. And so I feel like I have learned a lot, and I still have so much more to learn. So it's exciting to me because my teachers are helping me learn as well. And so that was one of the biggest takeaways I had from it, is I was really excited to see that it also built a really good trust and rapport, because I showed them that I am vulnerable too, and I don't know all the things that they don't know. And so we're learning together. So that was one of the big takeaways for me.
What a great week we've had here at Harborview Elementary. Thanks to our principal, Mrs. Guest, and our awesome third grade teacher, Mrs. Mills. In this edition of Grantham Greats, we focused on the observation cycle. The observation cycle consists of the pre-observation, the observation, and the post-observation. The pre-observations, where teachers talk about the standards that they're going to teach that day. They might ask an objective or an essential question, and the most important part of that is the assessment. How are you going to assess what the students know? The observation should be as natural as possible. It should be a naturalistic environment where you see typically what happens within the classroom. The post-observation is the most meaningful part of the observation cycle. The post-observation is a chance for that teacher to truly reflect on his or her craft and to improve as a teacher. We do thank you for joining us. We hope that you enjoyed this segment. And as always, we don't want you to be good, we want you to be great.